I was muted. Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. Good thing that was a quick and easy fix. I was recording some stuff and muted my mic because I was using OBS to record and I forgot to unmute it because I never mute my mic on OBS. Anyway, hello. What's this clip? It's a quiet clip. Oh, is my clip lagging? Oh no, I think it's lagging. Uh-oh. I think my clip thing is broken. Oops. I guess that'll be there until it decides to fix itself. Hello everyone. Congratulations. Let's see who got the first redeem. It was Toki got the first redeem 6 minutes ago. Oh, it's almost going, the clip. But then I had to close OBS and reopen it real quick because I forgot to open up my bot, my mix it up. It has to be open before. And so then Delta also got a first redeem is what my thing is telling me. So we got 2 first redeems today. And then hello readers.
Oh,
hello.
Was me.
There it goes. I don't know what the clip was about because it was lagging, but there it goes. It eventually worked. Let's see, who all is in here? I gotta scroll back to the top. So we got Toki, we got Creative, who is lurking, Deltara, Ninja, long time no see. Yes, very long time. And then there's Jade and Blue, Mumdy, see Jade, Sylvia, and then of course Nap who came in with the raid. Get yourself some food, and then Robo. Kira making me speak in ooh. Hello, Nico. Hello. I actually didn't have a plan to stream today. I wasn't even planning to stream today. I was just like, I was playing Minecraft while, you know, Tonito was streaming, and I started talking with people. I was like, wow, this is fun. And then Tonito was ending, and I was like, he's raiding Nap, so we'll just watch Nap. And then Nap said they were ending. I was like, well, it always sucks when you don't have someone who you have to watch. So I was like, I'll stream. I'll be the entertainment for everyone. Don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do my best. That's my life motto. The blank look after he gets bung. Yee. Stream the build of your library. That would be some resource gathering, I think. I don't even know. I don't have a design for it yet, Tonito. I don't know how entertaining that would be because I don't really have a plan for that is the thing. Because I got to the point where I'm going to start to need the blocks that I'm going to build with it. But I don't know what blocks, so I need to do some testing in a creative world to see what block palette I want to use. So I need to figure that out because what I would do for really big builds is I would use a lot of quartz and stuff, but that's not an easy block to get. So there is that. I guess I could do the creative planning because I usually don't do planning on the creative world and then go to survival. I've never done that before. So I just need to, what I want to do is go into just a little bit creative world and just figure out a block palette because I'm not going to design. I'm not going to figure out the shape in the creative world. I either build in the creative world or I build in the survival world, not in between. But since I didn't have a concrete plan on what I want for the library, just not sure. And then there's Stelvac. I need to get my TTS fixed. Every time I see Stelvac, I'm like, oh, gotta fix my TTS. That's every time. And I'm just like, nah, it's still broken. I guess I could try fixing it right here live on stream. Because we'll see. We'll see if I'll just be the TTS. Let's see. Twitch channel points. Add to existing command. It's turned off, but I could turn it back on. TTS. And then, how do I make it read? Text to speech. Okay, add that. And then I need to figure out, I need to Google the thing. Text to speech. All right, oh, I have pats. I didn't see them because I'm blind, but I appreciate them. They did go, right? I hope, yeah. All right, and then I'm just skipping through this tutorial real quick. All right, text to speech. He did the plus button. Username. Said message. All right, let's see if this will work. So if I type in message. Now I gotta, oh, thank you for the help hats again. You gotta play with the hair flippies? Here, just, you guys, you want the hair flippies. This is what you want. This is the content you all want. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Hair flippies. It's incoming. This is what you want? Is this what we want? Is this what we want? Wow, look at the hair flippies. Yeah. Flip, 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 flip. It's not as bouncy as it could be, but it's gonna be okay because with my 2D model, Blue is making it so bouncy. It's gonna be way better than what it is right now. It's gonna be so bouncy. It's gonna be so bouncy. Can we get a shout out for Blue? Maybe the clip thing will work now because she's awesome. She's doing the rigging of my 2D model. She's my 2D model mama. Let's see. Instead of resuming regular size, just
I've been running a mix of eucalyptus and tea tree that I've
it's
been
working.
using. That's one of my favorite scents is eucalyptus. No one say eucalyptus dig. Don't do do not.
What?
I already said it, so no one needs to say it. Oh boy. But yeah, so
Oh my god. That's great. I love it. I love it so much. We're also going to need a shout out for the burb man, Gihan, because he is the one drawing my 2D model. So Blue does the rigging and Gihan does the art. Old model docs. Look at that. We're going to get 2 of them. Someone bonk Blue. Extra game Pharaoh because we got Gihan on the screen. Theoretically, TTF should work now. Theoretically.
Pre-existing game mechanics and stuff like that. And she does it. Ooh.
Squisher! Yeah, squisher!
Wow. Cool. Ooh. Are you guys seeing this?
Nice. I don't know if TTS is gonna work. And oh, it's still broken! Why is it still broken? We're getting it twice. What if I... Oh, there's Gihan. Hi, Gihan. Why is it... Okay, it would probably be... Okay, yeah, mix it up is there. So... Wait a minute. If I do this... Hang on. I'm gonna fix it. Alright, so if I do... that, and then mix it up, that, and then if I okay, theoretically it should work now.
Should work now.
It's not, and I don't know why. He just sips his tea. He just exists and makes you flustered. What do you mean I had to make it French? I just did the default. That's just the default voice it uses. I can change it.
This seems like it works.
I can change the voice. Let's see, what do we want? What about Australian female? I'm gonna test it.
Test message.
I don't like that one. We're gonna do this.
Test message.
That one's worse. You guys get to come along this trip with me about figuring out what voice we want to use.
Maybe the real text-to-speech were the friends we made along the way.
Go back to French. Well, I'm just gonna go through the list.
Test message.
And if you guys like one, let me know.
Test message.
That one's a little bit too high pitched for me.
Test message.
Oh, that one's not too bad. What's this one?
Test message.
Ooh. Ooh. Do you guys like that one? I like that one. That one's a good one. You like the French? You don't like the current one? You want the French? We go back to French. French. Oh, there's two different French. There's French Canadian, and then there's French. I don't know which one. Here. Was it this one?
Test message.
No, that wasn't the one that it started with. It was this one.
Test message.
All right, save. Yeah, it just says test message when it does it. I wonder if there's a German one, because then we could have female Duke. Is this it?
Test message.
Yeah, we're looking for Duchess right now. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for Duchess. It doesn't say it has a German one at all. There's no German option. What? What about... I guess I'm just gonna have to try to get as close as I can.
Test message.
What about that one? That one's... I don't want to say what it is. That one kind of sounds like a female Duke. Let's see. What's the... I don't know what would be the next closest thing, because it's literally not giving me a German option, which is actually really disappointing. What about this one? This might sound British,
Test
though.
message.
Nope, not that one. U.S. English?
Test message.
Ugh! Ew. U.S. English voice. Absolutely not. I guess we'll just stick with what we got. What do you guys think of this one?
Test message.
How's that one? Or do we want to go back to French? Maybe. French? You going to the... Okay, we'll do the French one. Well, we got French female and then French male. So this is the female one.
Test message.
What does the male one sound like?
Test message.
I kind of like the female one better. There we go. All right. We got TTS. And I can always do it later and tweak it and whatnot. I'm gonna drink some water now. So now we have TTS. It's gonna, I don't, it sounds a little bit weird, but whatever. Can we just borrow Nep? We just make Nep read it all. We're just gonna bully Nep. Yep, that's what we're doing. We're gonna bully Nep. So my stream today was a little bit spontaneous. Usually before I hit start stream, I like plan out what I'm doing, if it's gonna be just chatting or if I'm gonna play a game. But Tony To rated Nep Nep, and then Nep Nep said they were ending, and I was like, oh, we need someone in the friend group to stream because we gotta have the entertainment. And so I hit start streaming without actually doing any of my pre-stream setup. So there's that. I mean, I don't even know what we would be doing. I guess we could do Minecraft. We did do Minecraft yesterday though, so I don't know if you guys want that again. Let me look at my game library. Cause I'd have to download a game, I think, because I don't have a lot of lore. But my lore's not done yet. It's not done. I wonder if there's some of it that I could talk about. Lore concepts? Yeah, one sec, I need to sneeze. There we go. Like, themes and motifs. I always get those mixed up. Like, I know them, but I don't know. Like, if you told me to define them without Googling it first, I could not, because I could talk about writing for a while. Oh, I've been debooped. Thank you for the boops. But I have a hard time of theme definition. I always get them mixed up. Oh, so a theme is a central topic, subject, or message within a narrative. Yep, that okay. And then what was a motif? Like, I know how to write, but I don't know anything about writing terms. Distinct feature or idea that occurs across a story often. Oh, that's similar. Okay. So I guess I could talk about my writing process. Themes are broader and motifs are smaller narrative devices that enhance the theme. Thank you, Gihan. See, I just need to have a guest speaker teacher Gihan, because for those of you who don't know, Gihan actually did teach at one point. He was an art teacher, right? Yeah, that's why Gihan can do multiple different art styles. So if you want to get art from Gihan or Blue, you got lots of different options, not just what you see. Because that's one of the things that, like, I was like, oh, Gihan does this style, but that's not the style I want for my model. So I'll go find a different artist. But then Blue was like, Gihan does multiple styles. And I was like, oh, I would. And so now I get a model from the best art rigger duo. The married couple of Blue and Burb. The Blue Burb. Let's see. Usually when I write stories, I already have a general idea about what I want to write. And how that happens is I don't really want to say the ideas just pop into my head. One of the if you want to be a good writer, I feel like one of the things you need to do is you need to expose yourself to a lot of different media with lots of different books. Like, they say don't read because it'll be bad for your writing, but they just say, but that's more so like don't read like a little bit. You want to read a lot. You either read a lot to get really good, because then you get more ideas, you get to learn about different writing styles, and that can inspire you to help develop your own style. And then you also get to get new ideas and stuff, and you can see what's more common or not. And you're going to want to, one of the things that I have that helps me is I am a part, one of the TikTok feeds that I think I'm a part of is Writing Talk, where I get videos from like editors and published authors, and they're like writing tips and tricks, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna save that for me. And so I have that. I have a whole folder on my phone that's just this is just about writing tips. So I guess to make sure that you are exposing yourself to those to learn more. One of the things I have here, you know what? Let's do an exercise. I'll do a writing exercise with you guys. Hang on. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna bring something up. This is what we're gonna do. Writing with Sylvia on stream. That's what we're doing. Let me just I gotta log in. Of course, log in. Just give me 1 second. Writing on stream. I'm gonna make a new thing for it, and we're gonna write some stuffs. Speeding through this so you can get to the writing exercise. What do you mean it looks like I'm offline? Did my stream crash? No, the website is just fucking with me. They're adding new Minecraft paintings? That's cool. That's really cool. All right, I'm just gonna warn you guys straight up. This is gonna be a very bright page. I'm about to switch over to my writing program that I like to use, and you are all about to get blasted because it is a very bright thing. So, you're being warned. This is your warning. You're about to get blasted with light. Browser-based? It is. Here we go. But I want to talk about this thing that I'm using with, this is called Readsy. Hang on, let me get out of the full screen so you guys, so this is, oh, you can't really see it. So it's Reedsy, Readsy. Readsy.com is the writing software that I like to use. Would you like a dark mode for your browser? Browser, actually, that would be nice. Let's just go dark mode. Wait, hang on. I don't want you guys to see this stuff, just in case something pops up. Dark mode for Chrome? Dark Sylvia is just dark mode Sylvia. Hang on. It's called Dark Reader? Alright, so get the Dark Reader extension. There it is. That looks kind of scary. You want... Wow. Of course my husband wants that. Well, the moi was redeemed first, so that's what I'm doing first. You ready? You ready for this? Mwah. 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 Kisses for you. Mwah. Mwah. All right, now we're gonna switch to Dark Sylvia. So give me 1 second. There we go. I'm gonna save my eyeballs, add Chrome, add extension. There we go. Whoa. So now, this is nice. Everybody say thank you, Blue. Saving our eyeballs. That's better. That is so much better. Look at this. Look at this. This is nice. Anyway, as I was saying, I really like Readsy, because not only does it make it super easy to edit, because like if I add a chapter, I can move these chapters so easy. And all that stuff. How do I delete it? Oh, I have to click, and you have to click the edit button, I guess, to delete it. I've never actually deleted a chapter before. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never deleted a chapter before. We'll leave it. But one of the things of Readsy is that on the main page, not this writing page that I'm on, but on the home page, when you go into your library of books that you've written, it asks you if you want to connect with an editor. So not only is it a writing software for you to write with, and your writing is all protected, but how Readsy makes its money is by connecting authors with editors and publishers. And so the reason why I switched away from Google is because, for those of you who don't know, Google Docs, everything you write in there is being scanned by AI. Your writing is not protected with Google Docs. And that is how I found Readsy, was because I was looking for a different writing program, and it's way better, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab my notebook. I have a book. And a book? What book, Sylvia? It's called Complete the Story. It is a story starter book. I'm just going to flip to a random page. I don't like that one. I'm going to find a story starter, and this is a good writing exercise, I think. I just need to find one that I vibe with. They're not all great. I guess one of the hardest things about trying to use story starters is that you don't always vibe with them. Wait, sorry. The problem is that I've also used a lot of these in this book already, so I'm having to find a page where I haven't already written one, because if I've already written something for it, it's kind of like cheating. You know? Okay. I'm gonna write down as what it says in the book, and then we're gonna go from there. I could let them. I write faster than this normally, but not right now, because I am copying something. All right, so this is the story starter that I have in my story starter notebook that we are going to start with. Now, I used to write exclusively in first person POV, which is not bad at all. I'm not saying this as a bad thing. I have just transitioned more into third person because I have found myself liking to be able to jump from person to person and like what's going on with them. Some books do a good job of having multiple main characters where it is first person POV, but they follow multiple characters. There's actually a book series I do like, I've read. I don't know if I would still like it because I read it in like late middle school, and you know how taste can change, but I remember it doing a good job of switching between the two. But I swapped more to third person. So what I'm going to do with this one, it says, I couldn't let them get away with it. They and people like them had gotten away with similar things in the past. And that is the story starter to try to get you started writing. And if you want that, you can go ahead, write that down yourself, if you already have an idea. So one of the first things I would want to do is, who is I? Who is our main character? So we need to figure that out first. And this is gonna help decide our entire story. And that can seem really, really, really daunting. But I guess the thing that you need to focus on is that this is who you want the readers to relate with. Your main character is the person who you want your readers to want to know what's going to happen next about, whether they love them or they hate them, because you can have a main character villain if you want. It is Dark Sylvia Creative. Yes, right here. I'm going to do story time. Here, I'm going to change the title to be Story Time with Sylvia if I can. Or I'll do Storytime Tips. Storytime Tips. That way people don't think I'm telling a story. Storytime Tips. Hello, I love yous. How do you approach revisions? For story starters or for stuff that I have written? Because I would revise this. I would not continue the story with this story starter. I would edit what this says. So this is our original. This is our original. This is what we are starting with. This is our starting point. But I would probably do something a little bit different. Like, let's see. I couldn't let them get away with it. They and people like them had gotten away with similar things in the past. So if I was going to stay, because I don't know who the main character is yet, which if you don't know who your main character is yet, it's a little bit hard to do third person POV. So I'm going to stick with first person for now. So I would rewrite this in a first person. So here, I'll do first POV. That's what we'll do. So I would probably change it up to be with something like, I couldn't let them get away with it. They had gotten away with so much already. And this was it, the final straw, my final breaking point. It was time to show them I wouldn't just let things go anymore. Let's see. This time, they would face consequences. And if we want to lead it into the same thing, for like consequences, you could do it as this time they would face consequences, or if you wanted it to be open-ended like this one, you could do it, they would face the consequences for, and so it would still be open-ended like that. So I would change it. So I've taken this and you see, this is just like 2 sentences, and this one almost feels like a run-on sentence, even though it's technically not. And I've broken it up more to be a little bit more dramatic, I think. Let's see. Too much on revisions. Yeah. That is something that people can definitely get stuck in. One of the things that I've definitely had to practice with is not getting stuck in the revisions. That happens to a lot of people. Why is it? Yep. I just spit stuff. Yes, that is actually a really good idea. Hang on, I'm gonna switch back to normal Sylvia because it's been 11 minutes. You guys got an extra minute of Dark Sylvia. There we go. So one of the things that definitely happens when you are writing is you can definitely get stuck in a revision loop where you just keep on editing and editing and editing what you've written, and you are technically making progress, but you're not really. You're just in this loop. It's just, the story is just a bunch of things happening to a character and seeing what the character does. Yes. That is very good. One of the tips that I would like to say, if you're writing a story, is if your main character died in the middle of the story, could the story keep going? And if the answer is no, your supporting characters are not developed enough. So you need it to be so where, like, obviously your supporting characters are support, but if, for example, your main character died just halfway through the story, would the plot still get resolved by the other characters? Would the people that they have met along the way, are their goals similar enough, or do they care enough about the main character to try to help accomplish the goal that they died for, or they died before they could? Can your story keep going without the main character? Obviously, the purpose of a main character is to be the main character, but if your story is dependent on the main character, you are gonna fall into the trap of plot armor. So the main character has supports, because if the main character can't do a thing, they get supported by the other characters. So supporting characters, they help the main character, but also, if the main character died, could keep the story going. I already wrote that. Could keep the story going. There. The world continues without the main character, or is it? So if you're writing a book, and we'll just use the general, oh, there's a big bad, he's trying to destroy the world, and you're the chosen one, and you have, like, the love interest and the comic relief and, like, two other characters that are going on the adventure with you. But one of the fights, the main character, unlike a mini boss, dies. Now, if you do this, this would actually be really interesting, and now I kind of want to do it, writing a story where the main character dies halfway through. You would have to come to a decision, because if you're doing first-person POV, you would then have to, I think, one of the things you would have to do is, here, we're gonna do this. If the main character dies halfway, we're just going to do it like this now. If the main character dies halfway, one of the things that you're going to need to do is, what is the POV? If it's first-person POV, you're either going to switch to a new character, I feel like, or having, up until that point, having up until the death switches of who the first POV. So I could see it as like, oh, this is the main character, but sometimes we visit the other character's POV to see what is going on with them, if you're doing a first POV. And then, so when the main character dies, the readers are already used to being in these other characters' minds and seeing it from their story. The other way is you're going to switch to an entirely new character. So if it's the main character and he dies, you could switch to the next closest friend. Like, if they have a love interest, maybe they're the new main character now. Like, you haven't actually been able to see all what was going on, and now that you switch to this character, how does the main character's death affect them, and how they keep going for defeating this big bad, and how does that grief affect them as a character? So that could be really interesting if you are already switching between two. Because I could see if you're switching between two and then one of them dies and you're just with the one for the rest of it, then you would already know the character and then you could see how the grief affects them. Or you could just have the one POV the whole time. The main character dies and you go to the new person. And you only know this person from someone else's eyes, which isn't entirely accurate. We all know that who we are as a person, like who I am, is not necessarily how people perceive me. And so there's going to be some of that discovery when you switch POVs, especially if the new character is close to the character that died. You're going to have that grief period. Because I don't recommend switching to a completely brand new character that the audience, your reader, hasn't met. It should be a character that is already established prior to the main character's death. Because otherwise, I feel like the reader would get confused. If you're doing third person POV, it's going to be a lot easier because you were already outside. You can already talk about other people, and it's you've never met him yet. Exactly. It would be kind of funny to read like a comedy book. I don't think I've ever read like a historical fantasy or a fantasy adventure or any type of adventure comedy book. I actually really want to do that. I feel like that'd be good for a comedy book, but already if you've already established it, and I don't think the character would die, it'd be something else. To do a sequel campaign? Yes. This you can apply things from writing books and stuff to D&D, and I suppose that's why I like D&D. I love writing, I love creating stories and characters, and I love being a part of fantastical stories and characters. That's why I write role plays with my friends where like main characters, there's just one where she's the main character and I'm all the other characters. I came up with the idea and I was like, haha, you're the main character and I'll be everyone else. And I wrote up backgrounds for 90 plus characters. And the plot is that she is the rightful heir to the throne. She's a princess. One of the dukedoms had usurped the throne, and one of the other nobles was able to save her because she was 4 when this happened. And now she is like 16 in the current story of it, and she has been pretending to be this noble's daughter, trying to gather support, make allies within the noble community in order to retake the throne. And that is the plot that we're doing. And I have every single noble family written up. And every single character, even one she hasn't met or even heard of yet, they have a background in case they need to be referenced in the story. And that's how I write stories. Because I feel like sometimes if you're writing a story and you're like, oh, I need to add this thing, and you add it midway through the story, you can do that. Just make sure that if you add something completely new to the story midway through, you go back through your story in the beginning and read through it so you don't have any consistency errors. So if like you make something midway through your story that just didn't exist in the world, you have to go back through your story and make sure it makes sense and you don't have any plot holes with this new thing that you've introduced. So I usually go ham with writing all the information first and then writing my story, but that can be pretty intimidating for people, and that's why I've started to make some writing templates, and I think I've shared, I'm going to need to reshare them. I'm going to need to reshare my templates in the Discord. But the templates are definitely one of the hardest parts I found about writing was figuring out what information I needed for my story, because sometimes I wouldn't realize what I needed until I got to that point. And so I made these templates not just for myself, but to make it easier for others, because sometimes you just don't know what you need. Yeah, all your characters died in your campaign. So you're going to need new characters. How would you combat the readers losing their sense of investment in a supporting character takes over the story? So you would want to, since character B can't live the life of character A. So that's why it's also very, very important that it is not a random character. It has to be the new character, the new main character have to be already established. And you have to do it in a way to where they're not just like, oh, they're just a supporting character. They're just the background. They're just comedy relief. You have to have already had moments with those characters to have the reader be invested. For example, I'm just gonna reference Avatar: The Last Airbender because I love them. I love their character development. I think they do great story writing. Avatar: The Last Airbender. You have Aang, you have Katara, you have Sokka, and then you have Toph, right? You don't always have Toph in the beginning, but you do get Toph eventually. But if at the point when we get Toph, and let's see, it's been a while, and like, what if, because like when Zuko came to join the group, let's just do this hypothetically, he changed his mind. He wanted his honor, and he killed Aang. At that point in the story, when you have Katara, you have Sokka, and you have Toph, if instead when Zuko joined, he just killed Aang, you're not gonna stop. You're not gonna stop watching or reading that, right? Because you already love Katara, you already love Sokka. There's already been so much character development, and even with Toph, you're gonna wonder what those three are gonna do for Aang. And I know, but technically, if Aang died, it couldn't reach its conclusion, but you would still want to know what those three would do in response to that, because you already know that they were so like deeply intertwined with the story, and they were going on this adventure, and yes, they were doing this all for Aang, but what would have happened if he died? You're not just going to stop reading like, oh, Aang's dead, I guess the story's done. You'd be like, wait, Aang's dead? How are they going to defeat the Fire Lord now? So that's what I would have done if that had happened, I know it can't technically reach its ultimate conclusion, but that's just the first example that I could come up with off the top of my head. Because you were already you have to make sure that the characters that you are now following are already so established with the reader that they're gonna want to know how they react to it. It's definitely not satisfying, so definitely make sure that it's already kind of established. I feel like if you're gonna switch from main characters, it has to be kind of leading up to that. You're gonna have to lead up to that. I don't recommend switching to completely new character. I thinking having switching between a couple of people, like you have your main character, but then you're like switching POVs to other characters as well, or you're doing your third person POV. So it's already established. You already follow other characters in the story, so when they die, it's not as abrupt. Would have to have would have to fit a pre-established thing. Yeah. So I feel like if you were to kill your main character, it has to be leading up to it. You have to already have your reader prepared unknowingly that this is happening, and they're going to be okay with the event. It has to make sense. Like, obviously, don't just like, oh, they tripped and fell and they like hit their head and died. Make it make sense with the story if you're going to kill off your main character. But I don't know. I don't really love stories that it's obvious where the main character is dependent on the story. Oh, I guess a better example would be Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones has been out for a while. I'm going to talk about this. The first season, the main guy dies. He dies at the end, but the story keeps going. The next season, people were like, oh, they were just like, wow, there's going to be more to this. And like, Timmy fell into a volcano. I've been booped. Oh, but technically the boop happened after the dark. So hang on. I'm going to swap. Bing bum bum bing bum bum bing bum bum bum. There we go. Thank you for the boops. Yay. All right. So I think you would already have to have the changing of the POV. First POV. Switch to a new character. Not recommended. There we go. Oh, that was on caps. Oops. Yeah, I don't recommend switching to an entirely new character. I feel like it needs to have been built up for it. He's the main driver. Main characters, obviously. But I didn't know that in the first season. In the first season, I didn't realize that as someone watching the show. I haven't read the books, so maybe it's different with the books. Shouldn't the secondary character be the protagonist? Yeah, you can do it that way. Where the secondary is the actual protagonist. You know, you could write a book where you're following the sidekick, quote unquote. And then, you know, sidekicks sometimes die and then you're following the main character. I feel like that could work, actually. What if, we'll do this. The main character could be the sidekick. Then we switch to the true protagonist. If I can spell. There. That's another good idea. Storyboarding. Someone asked for lore, but my lore isn't ready to share yet with the rewriting. I do have some lore on my website. It is going to become slightly outdated though. So I was just like, we'll talk about my writing process. And so I picked out a story starter from my story starter book. This is the original. And then I rewrote it. And then we started talking about main characters, and I said if your main character dies, does the story keep going? Might be a mixing of definitions when using the term main character is the same as the protagonist. I view the main character as the person you're mainly following. You're mainly focused on this. So if we are following, let's say, Abigail, because Stardew on the brain. If the whole book is been from Abigail's point of view, and they got this new farmer in town, and whatever, Abigail hurts in the mines or whatever, and then the farmer, I don't know. So the protagonist died, then by definition the story kind of ends there. When I'm using, it's. Maybe I'm not understanding what you mean by main character and protagonist. Because they refer to the main character as the protagonist. And it's usually the most important character in the story. I feel like main characters don't usually die because that's usually what the story is about. But if they die, the world doesn't just end and it would keep going. So how would the world react to that? And so it's also a good way to help you build your side characters is knowing how they would respond to that. Would they fall into grief? Would they be in denial? That's one of the stages of the grief, but some people really fall into it. And how would the world be different if they just died in the middle of your story? And would your other characters still be continuing for the goal? Yes, your world doesn't end with a single person's death, even if it's the main character. Your world continues on. Your world has to feel like it's going to keep on going, even if your main character dies, because sadly, that's what happens in real life. When people die, the world keeps going. Even if your world feels like it's falling apart, your next door neighbor is just going about their day. If the story was in third person, if the main character died, the story would continue on. You could see the story ending if it was a first-person POV. However, I've read books where it's switched between two characters. The specific series that I'm thinking of is called Witch and Wizard, where it switches between the sister and the brother. And when a new chapter starts, it's from a different one of their perspectives, and it tells you. So it switched back and forth, back and forth. So you could do that where I don't recommend doing it with too many characters. I think 3 at the most, maybe 4. 4 feels like it's pushing it if you're going to switch between POVs. So I would say 3, maybe 4. And you can have the POV switch. I don't recommend doing it mid-chapter. You would have to be very clear and concise with it if you are going to do it mid-chapter. But there are books where they switch between first-person POV to a different character. And so you can do that. John Wick series. John Wick dies and another character takes over. It kind of defeats the purpose of the John Wick story. Yeah, that one... There are going to be some stories where the story would end with the character, because if John Wick died, then there's really no story. But how would the world react to his death? You could write the story about that, because John Wick was so renowned in his community that even after he's retired and someone stole his car, they're like, you're a fucking idiot. And so if he died, I feel like there's a story in the aftermath of that, of how that community would change because he's dead. So you still have your story, it's just going in a different direction now. Writing a plot that can survive its main character's death, and writing a cast of characters who are interesting enough to stand on their own. Yes, I guess that does make sense, Selvak. Making a cast of characters that can stand on their own is maybe another thing. Maybe I was equating them to the same thing, but I do think it's very important to have your side characters be able to stand on their own. They could have their own story, even if it's not as exciting as the main one that you're writing. If it's still the story you want to tell. Well, you don't have to kill your main character. Just know how the world would react to it. Yeah. Know how the world would react to it and have your characters fleshed out enough to deal with it. Because if your other characters aren't fleshed out enough, the story isn't going to feel real enough. Yeah. I still think it's a good writing exercise. So if the main character... Here, let me rephrase this. If the main character died... How would it affect other characters? It's a good exercise to flesh out your supporting characters. Because unless you really go into a story planning that your main character is going to die, they're probably not going to die, but you still need to make sure that everyone's fleshed out. Yeah, because if I go back to my example that with my story that I'm writing with my friend, if her character died, there's not necessarily someone who could retake the throne. The noble family that supported her could try to coup the coup because the dukes took over, or one of the dukes' family took over. The original story would definitely change. The goal would change if the main character... Ooh, I'm choking on air. Okay, yeah. Oh, here, let me rephrase this even more. But also need to be fleshed out. How would they react to death? Whether a family member, friend, stranger. There. You're at ad jail. Oh no. Stellar Blade ad. There you go. I'm gonna rewrite that, and I'm gonna switch back to normal, Sylvia, because it has been 10 minutes. There we go. Boop. Close my Steam. I don't know why I have my Steam open. I'm not using Steam. Alright, so we're just going to rephrase it. Because I do think that I think I thought about it as a different way, but after talking with you guys, I do think I have a better understanding of what I was trying to convey. So the supporting characters, they help the main character, but they also need to be fleshed out. So how they would react to death with their family, friend, stranger. And how would the story world change if the main character died? Here, we're just gonna if. There we go. Here we go. So know how the world would react if they died. Yeah. Worded it funny at first. Yeah. I always like to say that I'm way better at writing than I am talking because I actually get to think about what I'm saying when I write it out. Also, organically moving the story forward. I want to introduce one of the characters, and they just that I don't like that at all. I totally get that, David. If the main character dies, thing is hypothetical. Yeah, you're not really gonna try this. I'm not saying kill off your main character. I'm saying know what would happen if they did die, because that could help your writing. No one's really. I'm not recommending to kill off your main character. You only really. You plan for that. You go into the story knowing that they're gonna die if you're gonna do that. So just know what would happen if they died. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. I can words. I can do stuff. I can write. I guess I could show you some of my work. Hang on. Just gonna hide it. Yeah, I need to have stakes. Where the entire cast dies. Yeah. Alright, I'm gonna switch pages, so I don't want you guys to see that. Why can't I see my bookmarks bar? I'm gonna switch to Notion, which is where I do a lot of my planning. I use Readsy for writing, but I use Notion for a lot of my planning. And I'm gonna show you guys. I'm gonna show you guys what I have for. This is the role play. This is the role play that I have for me and my friend, the one that I mentioned before. So this is what I have. I have a couple of just straight up notes over here, even though I do have a notes section. These are just for me. So she doesn't know any of this stuff. So you know who you are. If you're watching this, stop it. Stop it right now. You're not allowed to see this if this is you. Hang on, my model's not modeling. I mean, she is, but not correctly. All right. This is top secret information. To the group who was in the campaign, and I'm gonna keep her alive during that section to follow somebody in the real world while the others are in life. Huh, interesting, Selvak. Story in the afterlife. Yeah, story in the afterlife. Alright, so first, I do have a map because I made a continent map and I named all the the kingdoms and empires just so that they could be referenced. But where we're focusing is Sylvia, right here in this middle section. It's not actually landlocked because it has like a giant lake in the middle, but it's not ocean. I don't think any of them are landlocked. Nope. And then we go into Sylvia more, and I have. Because the focus is about the nobles and the struggle for power, I made sure to show all the territories and where they were located. and their names. And then I also, on the left here, did the family's colors, because I think that's a thing. If I did my research correctly, where like noble families would have their own colors, but then of course the kingdom would have their colors. So I have over here, and then you can see right here the capital it's going to be this red and gold one right here, because red and gold is the colors. All right, and then I have a history page here. Let me go to my main character page. The main character is my friend. This is her character, so this is what she looks like in current form. We didn't draw this. We just found pictures online and we're like, tee, these are our characters. So how I came up with this idea was this picture. I found this picture, and it's a pretty blonde princess-looking girl who's being like taken away. She does have a crown, and it's kind of like falling off, and they don't really have time to grab it. And so my brain was like, oh yes, this is a princess running for her life. And so that's what I went with for the story, that this is the starting image that I sent her. And then for her main character, her name, her real name, and then her alias. I'm also going to character the group. Let's see. Her age, if she has any allergies, she does. I usually roll a dice for that. For characters, it's allergies, phobias, and disabilities. I roll a dice, and evens yes, odd is no, and then if it's yes, 1, 2 is mild, 3, 4 is moderate, and 5, 6 is severe. And then I have their status, likes, dislikes, what their personality traits are to help stay consistent with writing, and then this is background information that she wrote. So she put together this information, and then I'll show you my characters. This is what we got over here. So we got each one of these is a character. It's not done yet. We got to load more that I have written up. These are all the nobles that I have for the story that she can meet or hear about. Let's do her. I'll just random person. So I have their family, their social class, their affiliation, because it depends on like the new royal family, the old royal family, or whatever. This relationship thing is just for her character. It's what their relationship is with my friend's character. Allergies, disabilities, phobias, likes, dislikes, because that helps the writing of the character. Personality traits, and then if they've been introduced. And then I have their name, status again, and then their motivation. Every character has a motivation written for them. And then their background, I usually try to go for 3 paragraphs. This is just a role play that I wrote up in high school, my junior year, and each of these characters is written up for this story. So this is not lore for me at all. This is not set in my lore world. This is a different world. No, this is a completely different world entirely. So, but characters that she hasn't even met and I don't even know if she's going to meet, they are written up so they can be referenced if it is relevant to the story. Because I didn't write up all their servants and all that, because they're not necessarily relevant to the story. Their personalities of each and every noble family, not relevant. However, this story follows her character who's trying to reclaim the throne, and she's trying to navigate the noble class, masquerading as just a regular nobleman's daughter, trying to gather support secretly without them knowing who she is, so she has allies when she goes to take the throne back. And she's trying to figure out who's actually on her side, who supports the original noble family, or if they'll just support her directly. She's trying to figure out who is not on her side so she can make allies. And so it's very important that I know who all the nobles are, because they are all relevant for the plot of the story. And so that is why I wrote up every single noble. You might not necessarily... I accidentally made OBS full screen. I didn't know I could do that. You might not necessarily need to do that. You might not need to write up an entire nobles for an entire kingdom for your story, depending on what the story is. But then again, it depends on what the story is. Mm-hmm. And then you can make it into book format, because I've done that with one of my other role plays. It's not complete yet. It takes a little bit of work to process it from role play format. Not too much into book format. Typewriter to a monkey and let it write your lore. Monkey lore. But that is what I do for my stories, is I write up all the characters and then we can start the story. A lot of details for all the characters. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is what I do. And I've gotten better at it over time. My first ever roleplay was not very detailed at all that. I did it on a Google Docs. It wasn't very organized. After a little while, I switched to Google Slides, which made it easier because then I could have each character have their own slide, because I think we all know trying to maneuver images on a docs is fun. Anyway, then I eventually switched to Notion because Google was going to start having AI read what you had written out. So I switched to something else that would not do that, because it is my information. It is my creative work, and I don't want an AI to have that. So, but you know what? It's even better because Notion is way better than Google Slides for writing planning. And then I really like Readsy for writing, just in general, rather than Google Docs. It helps keep it way more organized. If you know the characters front and back, then you know how they will act. Yes. Exactly, Gihan. The story comes naturally if your characters are fleshed out. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult, I believe, Stelvac, but if you have your characters fleshed out, the story should just happen. Go into it with a theme in mind for them. I guess technically, so what I would do for when I would do it for a role play is I would find a picture for the character. I'd be like, oh yes, this is that character. And then I would start with the mother and father of the family, the adults who would raise the children. And then I would find pictures for the children that looked like the adults. And then I would write them based on how I thought they would be as a person or present as a person. I have some who present as, for example, I have one that presents as very girly, but she hates dolls. She's just pretending. She wants to run away and be a knight. That's one of the characters. And then another character presents as very girly, and they straight up are, and they love it. So it depends on also their parents. So their parents, I write up their personality-wise first, based off of the picture. Hang on, maybe here. I'll go back and I'll show you an example of how the picture influenced me. I'll just pick one of them, and the theme here. Let me just, let's see. Crown of Blood and Gold, characters. It just kind of happens. So, like, some of them are obvious. Like, this guy, he's a bad guy. That's obvious, right? That one is obvious. This one, maybe it's not so much obvious because she's in bright colors. She's thinking, what could she be thinking about? I have her with her contemplating. I'm like, what is she thinking about? Since she is a noble, she is pretending to have a thought while she is actually using the upper noble language to put someone down in conversation. It's like, oh, but I thought it was this way. So I have written this character as a highly intelligent character, and she knows what she is saying with her words, and she is very on top of noble society. That is how I have written her. Let's see. another one that maybe isn't so much obvious. I want to click the one, I want to find one that's maybe a little bit different than that now. What about him? Ah! Okay. Alright, so this guy, it looks pretty, right? He's a pretty nobleman. Those noblemans are pretty. I wrote him as, since he is well dressed, but it's not overly flashy. It doesn't look like he's compensating at all. So he takes good care of his territory and he does his job well. But then I also took a look at his eyes and I was like, those are very seductive looking eyes. And so I decided that he frequently visits brothels. But I didn't want him to just be a normal guy who went to brothels, so I wrote his character as bisexual. So he has a wife and he goes to brothels for men. And that's how I wrote that character. And so it depends. Let's see, if I go to a child, it is more the younger child is more dependent on how their parents have raised them so far because they haven't quite fully developed as a person yet. So hers is not as filled out because she hasn't quite developed as a person yet, and I will add to it as things happen in the story. So that is what I do. You have a good idea for the types of things the characters are going to explore before you start writing the characters. I guess the main theme that I like to write is self-discovery. That is one of like the main themes that I really like having in my stories. So with the guy I just talked about, example, he's bisexual. He goes into brothels to be with guys. That's not something that like he talks about with people, but if my friend's character made that would then open up an idea to her to like, hey, do I also like women? Because like it's set in a time where like characters don't really think about that, and so I do have it set up so where like there's a lot of self-discovery that can happen with a lot of different characters, and that is one of the themes that I really like to focus on. Let's see. You zoned out and just mentally came back to stream mode. I totally get that. I do that so often when my friends are streaming. You know, sometimes, because there are two different ways I write stories. Sometimes I will see a picture or hear a song and I'll come up with the plot of the story, like, oh, the kingdom was overthrown. And then I write the characters based off of that. But there's also a lot of times where I come up with a character idea and then I write the plot around the character. Like, how did this character come to be? What are they trying to do? And all that stuff. I never really consciously put in effort for themes, but now that I'm thinking about it, I do mostly like self-discovery and self-improvement. Generally like commit with themes first and then making characters. Strong, opinionated characters. Yeah. Let's see. I never really thought too much about a theme. It was more so about the story of what was going on. Yeah, self-discovery does come naturally, doesn't it? I guess that's a little bit broad for me to say that's the theme that I do. I'm trying to think. I guess a lot of the time when I'm writing a story is that the main character can't do it all on their own. They have to let people help them in one way or another. So with that story, for example, I talked to her about like, hey, here are some of the things that you could do to reclaim the throne, but there are more options. So I talked about gathering allies within the noble community and then upstarting the throne that way, or going to a neighboring kingdom and getting an army that way, or maybe she would try to just straight up kill them and poison them and then reclaim the throne that way without having to interact with people as much. But all of those options, she has to get help some way or another. For like, even if she did like a poison route, there's no way that her character would be able to get into the castle and mess with their food and drinks. So she would have to create an ally of someone in the castle to help her with that. A lot of my stories, I try to make it so like this character cannot do it all on their own. No matter how hard they try. They cannot. They have to rely on other people, whether they want to or not. Oh, yeah. His thematic masculinity looks like. I guess I never really thought about individual themes for each person. There is one character where they are kind of obsessed with power. And this is not actually the person who upsurged the throne. But they were raised that way, like, oh, you need power, oh, we need this, we need that, you need to get stronger, and all the time. And he didn't exactly have a lot of control over his life, and he has had a lot of pressure put onto him, so he's gotten a little bit, I made him a little bit warped because of that. And so his sense of self is tied into with how much control he has over other people. And I guess his theme could be, what does true control actually look like? Because his current character uses fear as a control mechanism, but that's not necessarily the best way. Or what does his power look like, or his life, or I don't know. But beauty, leadership, betrayal. Yeah, I guess I never really thought about individual themes for the characters. I just kind of made them as people rather than I never really thought about it that way. Maybe I should have. Because I do look to Avatar: The Last Airbender a lot for like, character development. Because for Sokka, for example, he starts off very sexist in the beginning of the story, and then later in the story he understands that like women can do just as much, if not more, in certain situations. So that's one of the character developments. I guess the most obvious character development would be Zuko. Toph has some, but I feel like it didn't get fully explored. It gets more explored in the comics. I wish they would animate it. The beauty of it is that you can hone in on themes because it helps the type of story you want to tell. Yeah. I guess I never really thought about stories for the themes, more so the story. No, that doesn't make sense. The plot, I guess I focus more on the plot than the actual theme. Yeah, Toph does deal a lot with perfection, but it goes more into it in the comics. You definitely should read the comics if you hadn't, because they're good. They go into her a lot more on them too. Because like they do obviously touch on it, but I feel like it's not because we do get her later in the show rather than in the beginning. They don't have as much, us as the audience, we don't have as much time with Toph for her to get fleshed out, all that. But the comics are really cool. You get to go more in depth on her. Even if you read the comments, you find out what happened to Zuko's mother. So that's cool. That's really cool. I won't say anything on it because spoilers, but it's so cool. I'm gonna refill my cup with my backup water. There we go. Oh, you fill up the cup. Water. There we go. Very good. I probably sip. Okay, I probably your IRL theme would be justice. I wonder what mine would be. I guess I never really. I'm pretty sure that my characters do have themes. However, it's not something that I did on purpose with the theme in mind, if that makes sense. Because it's just not quite how my brain thinks. More so when I'm writing a character, I write their early childhood and basically in stages up to the point of when the character is. And I more so think about it of who they were before the story, who they are at the start of the story, and then I have a couple ideas on who they could become based on what could happen in the story. And usually I have an idea of like, oh, this person is either going to become A or B. And sometimes it's more vague than that. But it's usually it's more so like, I could probably figure out all their themes if I looked at them. I don't have the best understanding of themes because of how my brain functions. So I would need to understand themes more in order to label each character with a theme, but I'm almost certain that they all do have a theme. Here, I'm just gonna... Tessa! Hi, Tessa! How are you? I did see you were streaming earlier. I think I was lurking. I don't think I said hi or anything. Oh, we get a shout out for Tessa.
Like I have experience with lining up nuts and advancing rapidly. Wait. I mean, I do have 2 children.
We're gonna get a double
That's all I'll say.
shout out clip because we had them both happen at the same time. Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Definitely, I use that a lot, Gihan.
No.
Figuring out
we're going to completely
making them
ignore
work
that.
through trauma. I've
Wait,
traumatized a lot of my
Riley, no.
characters so they can overcome it
Riley,
or succumb.
Riley, quit. Riley, stop. Riley, please. Riley, stop it.
Go, Riley, go! You got this,
My
Riley.
finger is slipping off the control stick. Riley, stop it. If only you could see what's happening right now. It's a mess. It is a big mess.
Love the Riley
We went
mentions.
that way. Okay, we're committing. We went that way. They missed the zipper too. It's fine. Now she's sitting up. Fine. Okay, Riley, no, don't touch that. Please, Riley, no, stop. Okay, stop, Riley. Riley, stop. Is it your nap time again?
That's such a kid thing to say to that Blue. Just, yeah.
Ooh. I think it might be your nap time again.
And she wanted to grab the controller. Let her. She just wants to play the game. When Riley's
That is my
around,
finger
it's
grabbing.
her
Riley,
stream.
stop. Ah!
It's Riley's stream when Riley's around. I love hearing the Riley sounds in the background. If Riley ever decided that they wanted to start streaming one day, they are gonna have so much support. I would watch that when they became... How old do you have to be to stream on Twitch? Was it 14? Because they're just a little baby right now. You're just a little guy. I hope your stream was good. I can't remember what you were playing. I hope you had fun. And if you need food, water, make sure you get that. I totally understand raid and running if you need to do that. We are talking stories. Not any specific story. Just about writing in general. Yeah. I didn't have a plan for stream today. I was just like, I was hanging out with Tony Tell while he streamed, and then we raided Nep, but then Nep was like, oh, I'm gonna end. I'm like, oh, I'll start stream so people have someone to watch. And then I started stream, and I sat here and I realized I have no idea what I'm doing. I just kind of I started without a plan. Like there was zero thinking, zero planning. And so now we're talking about writing, and we've been talking about character themes. Blue wouldn't allow you to end. Oh no! But he said I was ready. So I saved you. You see, it was meant to be. I was supposed to stream today. To be someone that people could raid. That is the purpose. That is what we are doing. Also, I wanted to stream today because I will be going on a trip soon. Today is the 30th. So I'm leaving on the 2nd, so the day after tomorrow. To go see some family. My great-grandmother is having her 90th birthday. And we're all pretty sure it's going to be her last one, so we're all flying out. We're all going to pretend that we don't know that information, and we're just going to have a good time. And there's going to be a lot of people. There's going to be my dad, I think my brother, it's everyone on my dad's side of the family, because it's my dad's grandmother. So it'll be my grandma. I don't know if my grandfather's coming, but then my dad's sister, her husband, their 4 kids, and then some other people who I don't really know. But, and I'll be out there for about a week. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure I streamed beforehand, because hopefully when I get back, I'll have a new job. If someone will call me back, please. Please hire the deer. It's hard to find a new job, but, I'm going to be okay. It's going to be all good. What I traumatize my characters often, and if the character, it gives them something to work through. Job hunting is so hard. It's been tough. I've had only one place call me back, and that was pre-being fired, and I didn't get that job anyway. Because I did the interview, I thought I nailed it, and then I didn't get it. So, oh well. I always traumatize my characters. It gives them something to work through. And if they aren't already traumatized, they are going to be their trauma is planned for the story. So if they're not already, they're gonna be. That is usually what I do with my characters. I'm very evil at writing. I remember in the 5th grade, we had this writing time where we would have a period of time where we would write, and then there would be like an extra half hour where you could keep writing, but now people could also share their stories. And so I decided to do that one time, and I get people actually, at least some of the people, because some people would talk to me at recess about it, liked the story and where I was going with it. I don't exactly remember what I wrote now. I don't have that book anymore, the little notebook folder thing, whatever. And at one point, someone told me that they really liked this one side character. And then a couple of other people, because we were like talking in a little group, were like, oh yeah, I really like this character, really like this character. And I sat there as they were saying that, and I'm like, I'm going to kill them off. Because in my mind, as a 5th grader, I'm like, if I can make people cry from a character dying in my book, I have won as an author. But I didn't do it right then and there because, I got to build up to it. So I built up to it, and then I killed them off. And there was at least 2 separate people that were like, they yelled in the class. They're like, no! When I did that, I traumatized a couple of people in the classroom because they told me that they really liked this one side character, and I needed to prove my worth as an author by making people feel strong emotions. Because if I can make you feel strong emotions with my writing, I have won. And so I decided to do that. Teehee. I kind of caused a situation where I wasn't allowed to read for a little while because people were very upset. But then I was allowed to again. The teacher was just like, he felt bad for not letting me, but people were really mad. But it was so worth it. It was great. I succeeded as a writer. Teehee. it was fun. I wish I could go back to that sometimes. I never finished the story because I think I swapped to a different story after that because I was just like, what can I do now? Man. But yeah, that's the type of writer I like to be, is I want to elicit strong emotions from my reader. Whether they are really, really glad that, oh my gosh, the person did the thing, hooray! Or, oh no, they're dying! Not necessarily dying, but that was the first thing I could come up with. But, you know, great loss or whatever. Gotta make, if, I want you to be as upset as the characters are in the story about what's happening to them. That's the goal. Abysmal and everybody loved them. I love it. I think I did a lot of daydreaming more than writing. I did a lot of story planning in my head and reading in middle school. And then I got back into writing towards the end of middle school, in the beginning of high school. And then I fell out of it again because I was trying to find myself. Like, after freshman year, I fell out of writing again because I was trying to figure out who I was as a person and all that. Fun. And I also got into therapy towards the end of my senior year, so that was nice. And, you know, I figured out who I was, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm back in writing and all that, so yeah. Yeah. It's fun. I always really liked stories. Overloading with tropes. Yeah, there were definitely... I do still like some tropes, but you gotta just use them right because a lot of them are overused. And it's just like, you just gotta do it right. And so, you can do it right and have people enjoy them. But, you know, the reason why we have tropes is because people liked them. It's just that nowadays, with the internet and everything, we can access so much information. And it used to be where a book would get published and that was the content that you could read. But now we can read anything that anyone has written, even if it's not good. So the market has gotten a little bit oversaturated with the tropes because some people who need because we've just read some not so great written versions of it. I know I've written some bad things. Whereas it used to be where it would only be published works that like publishers got out there or your friends' works. And so it was a little bit different. But nowadays there's so much information everywhere that everything feels a little bit oversaturated. Subverting tropes, it has to be the right trope. I get that. I get it. But it has to be the right butt. It has to be the right butt. Thank you, Butt Spot. Thank you. I recently saw a post. It was like the most common tropes, but opposite. And it was like, instead of enemies to lovers, it's lovers to enemies. And another one was, instead of only one bed, there are too many beds. And so they go into the tavern room and there's like 6 beds. And it was basically going on like stuff like that. And I thought the whole, because I've seen like 3 different TikToks about that now, and I thought it was hilarious. Very, very good water. Water is so delicious. There are so many different ways to write now. So many stories. I do like how we do have access to a lot of information. Because if it was before and I didn't have autocorrect, there's no way I could be a writer because my brain just sometimes jumbles up a couple of letters. And then if I stare at one word for too long, it just doesn't look right. And then I question myself. Yeah. It doesn't look like I've written down much, but we've talked about a lot. We've talked about a lot of stuff while we've been streaming. I can't wait until I get to do the reveal for my lore, because I've written a lot. I have a world map, I have gods, I have afterlife. I don't have like any story set, but like what I'm writing right now is like the beginning of the world and the gods. I got a pantheon, and so content. It doesn't catch me using the wrong word, like, yeah, but it's not grammatically correct. That's true. That's true. Like using 2 or 2 or no or no. Let me see. Let me see if my website's gonna catch this. There is too much blue in this room. Okay, well, I didn't spell blue wrong. It says I have, but BLU is the correct way to spell blue. But it did not catch that I spelled it was the wrong 2. Instead of TO, it should have been TOO, unfortunately. I think there is an add-on you can get called Grammarly. I believe it's called Grammarly that I feel like a lot of people use. That if you're writing, you can have that be checked. I wonder if my spell check here. I'll change it to red. That way it doesn't think I'm misspelling it because it's not misspelled. Check document. Okay, well, it thinks POV is spelled wrong. Can it check grammar? Doesn't look like it can check grammar, unfortunate. But that is why we have proofreaders and editors to make sure that thing is all good and you know, proper. Words. I can do words. I'm gonna switch to just chatting. Because I'm not really typing all that much out here anyway. I'm just gonna switch to just chatting. So I can get off full screen of this. There we go. But, let's see. I'm just closing it because, you know, stuff. Here we go. Lovely. Autocorrect. I don't have it. I think I've turned it off on my computer to where it'll automatically fix the word because I don't like that. Because sometimes I've just misspelled a word so much that it thinks it's a different word. And you know what? That's my bad, but you know, whatever. Oh shit, I'm dying. Alrighty then. I'm just dying a little bit on the inside. I need to drink some more water. Whew. There we go. Let's see. Let's see. So, the plot can be a really hard thing to figure out, but overall, based on what I was saying before, if your characters are fleshed out and you have room for character growth and development, don't be afraid to traumatize your characters, then your story will help write itself. Yeah. Fleshed out with plot. Yeah, you guys want to see some plot? Here's my plot. Wiggly little ears. You watch me for the plot, aka my ears. That's what you guys are here for. I do think I Flippy wore. Oh, it's a hair patch. Thank you for the hair patch. Thank yous. Yay. Thank you. Some nice plot. Yeah, nice plot. Use your ears. It'll be even better once I have my Tootie model because it'll be rigged by Blue, and Blue is awesome. She does awesome rigging, awesome. She's awesome just in general. Yeah. I could spend a whole stream talking about her. I do need to work on some stuff. I'm sitting here and I talked about going on my trip and I'm like, oh, I haven't packed yet. So I do need to do that. So I'm gonna find someone to raid is what I'm gonna do. And no one I follow is streaming. That's okay. We'll find someone new. It's gonna be okay. Let's look at my recommended first. This is a cute model. They're also doing just chatting. Is it English though? Because I speak English. What is this? I think maybe they play Undertale. Sometimes. Nope, they're rigging up. They are not rigging up, they're wrapping up. Blue! Never mind, we're... Psych, I do have a friend streaming. We're gonna go raid Mummy. Alright, we're gonna raid Blue because Blue is amazing. We love her, she's awesome. She has great content. She has a great community, and she has a great personality. You just saw. Yeah, butt spot. Yep. / raid. I am Royal Blue. Alright, if you're not in the Discord, you should join the Discord because we have awesome people, awesome information, just, you know, awesome everything in general. I actually have my things working this time. We have our follower raid message and then our sub raid message. So make sure you copy and paste one of those. My takeaway was traumatize characters. Yes! Traumatize your characters for your plot! That is one of my go-tos. I'm just going to say this real quick. One of my go-tos for writing, I don't know why I came up with this, but this is what I did all throughout middle school whenever I had an OC, is her parents were killed, and then she was able to kill the murderer. That was my go-to for trauma for some reason. And I put her age as when that happened, like 8, and I like had a plan thought out where like, oh, they like tripped on like a bottle or something on the floor, and that's how she was able to get to them and stab them. Anyway, that's what I would write about. Thank you guys so much for coming to the stream, whether you lurk chatted, did a little bit of both, and I'm just being a silly little goofy goober. And we're gonna go raid Blue because we love Blue. She's amazing, and share lots of love. Thank you guys. Bye. I forgot to give you guys a kiss. Mwah.